Long before the gates were padlocked and the laughter faded, Spectre Falls Amusement Park was a place of joy and dreams. Families flocked to its grounds, eager to escape into a world of whirling rides and sugary delights. But now, under the pale light of the moon, the park stood silent and still, a forgotten relic of the past. It was a foggy night when the fire broke out, thick smoke curling through the park like a malevolent spirit. Screams of terror replaced the joyous laughter as flames devoured everything in their path. The carousel's painted horses melted into grotesque shapes, and the Ferris wheel's gondolas fell like fiery comets. By the time the fire was extinguished, it had claimed the lives of 10 children. Their faces, once bright with excitement, were now etched into the park's history as tragic victims. No one knew how the fire started, but whispers spread among the townsfolk, speaking of strange occurrences and ghostly apparitions. Years passed and the park was abandoned, left to rot and decay. Weeds choked the pathways and the once vibrant rides were now rusting hulks. But on certain nights, when the moon was full and the fog rolled in, some swore they could still hear the faint sound of children laughing and the distant melody of the carousel. The legend of Spectre Falls grew, each retelling adding more to its sinister lore. It became a rite of passage for the town's teenagers to sneak into the park, daring each other to face the ghost that supposedly haunted its grounds. Most returned with nothing more than a scare and a good story. But there were those who claimed to have seen the spectral figures of the lost children, their eyes filled with sorrow and anger. It was a sweltering summer night when Alex, Emma, Jake, and Mia gathered at their usual hangout spot by the old railroad tracks. They were restless, looking for something to break the monotony of their small-town lives. The conversation drifted to the legend of Spectre Falls, as it often did, and soon a challenge was issued. "Let's go to the park tonight," Jake suggested, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Unless you're too scared." Alex rolled his eyes. "Please, we've been through this before. It's just an old story." Emma and Mia exchanged nervous glances but nodded in agreement. The lure of the unknown and the thrill of the dare were too tempting to resist. They armed themselves with flashlights and backpacks, ready to face whatever awaited them. The walk to the park was filled with bravado and laughter, but as they approached the rusting gates of Spectre Falls, a heavy silence fell over them. The once grand entrance, now covered in vines and graffiti, loomed like the mouth of a monster, ready to swallow them whole. "Here we are," Jake said, pushing open the gate with a creak that echoed through the night. No turning back now. They stepped inside, the air immediately growing colder, carrying with it the faint scent of burnt wood. As they ventured further into the park, the fog thickened, and the shadows seemed to reach out to them, whispering secrets of a time long past. The group made their way through the eerie silence of the park, their footsteps crunching on the gravel pathways. The once vibrant attractions loomed like skeletal sentinels in the fog, casting long, distorted shadows. The night seemed to swallow all sound, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Alex held up his flashlight, sweeping it across the crumbling facade of the funhouse. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered, trying to mask his unease with bravado. Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Did you guys hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" Jake asked, his voice barely more than a breath. "That laughing." Emma's eyes were wide, scanning the darkness. Mia scoffed. "Come on, it's probably just the wind." But then they all heard it, faint, echoing laughter, as if carried on the wind from some far-off place. It was the innocent, joyous laughter of children, incongruous in the desolate, decaying amusement park. "That's not the wind," Alex said, his voice tight. "Let's check it out." They followed the sound, hearts pounding as it led them deeper into the park. The laughter seemed to dance around them, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. As they passed the rusting remains of the tilt-a-whirl, the laughter grew louder, more distinct. Jake stopped abruptly, pointing ahead. "Look!" In the dim light, they could make out shadowy figures flitting between the rides. The figures were small, childlike, and seemed to be playing a game, oblivious to the teens' presence. One moment they were there, the next they vanished into the fog. "Are those ghosts?" Mia whispered, her bravado slipping away. "Let's get a closer look," Alex said, trying to sound confident. But his hands trembled as he gripped his flashlight. They moved cautiously, the laughter growing louder and more unnerving with each step. As they neared the carousel, the figures disappeared, leaving only the echoes of their laughter behind. The carousel stood in a clearing, its paint chipped and peeling. The once bright colors faded to ghostly pastels. To their horror, it began to turn on its own, the haunting melody of its music box filling the air. The horses moved up and down, their glassy eyes seeming to follow the teens as they approached. "Who's there?" Jake called out, his voice shaking. The only answer was the relentless laughter, now mingled with faint, sorrowful whispers. The teens stood frozen, watching as ghostly children materialized on the carousel horses, their faces twisted in expressions of both joy and pain. The carousel spun faster, the music growing louder, more distorted. "We need to get out of here," Emma said, backing away. But the path they had taken seemed to have vanished, swallowed by the fog. They were trapped in a nightmare with no way out. The carousel continued its eerie dance, the ghostly children staring at them with hollow eyes, and the echoes of their laughter chilling the teens to the bone. The ghostly carousel continued its haunting rotation, the twisted lullaby filling the air with an eerie melody. The teens stood transfixed, unable to tear their eyes away from the spectral children riding the horses. "Do you see them?" Alex whispered, his voice barely audible over the music. Emma nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave. Now." But as they turned to flee, the carousel's music suddenly stopped, plunging the park into an oppressive silence. The ghostly children vanished, leaving the carousel to slowly creak to a halt. The abrupt quiet was even more unsettling than the laughter and music had been. Jake shone his flashlight around, searching for a path out. "This way," he urged, leading them toward a narrow walkway that seemed less overgrown. As they hurried down the path, the oppressive feeling of being watched grew stronger. They passed the dilapidated Ferris wheel, its gondolas swaying eerily in the wind, and the bumper cars, now home to creeping vines and rust. "Wait," Mia said, stopping suddenly. "Look over there." She pointed to a small, run-down building with a faded sign that read, "House of Horrors." The entrance gaped like a dark maw, daring them to enter. "We can't go in there," Emma protested. "We need to find a way out." "But maybe there's something in there," Jake countered. "Something that can help us." Reluctantly, they agreed and approached the House of Horrors. The air grew colder as they stepped inside, their flashlights barely piercing the darkness. The walls were lined with decaying posters of ghoulish figures, and the air smelled of mold and decay. As they ventured deeper, they felt an uncanny sensation, as if the walls themselves were watching them. The floorboards creaked under their weight, and every step seemed to echo with a disembodied moan. Shadows danced at the edge of their vision, fleeting and insubstantial. They reached a room filled with old animatronic figures, once meant to terrify visitors, but now frozen in grotesque poses. The figures seemed to come to life as the teens entered, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. A faint whispering began to fill the room, growing louder and more insistent. The teens huddled together, their flashlights flickering as if struggling against an unseen force. "Can you hear that?" Alex asked, his voice shaking. "It's them," Emma said, clutching Mia's arm. "The children. They're trying to tell us something." The whispers grew clearer, resolving into words that sent chills down their spines. "Help us. Find him. Revenge." "Find who?" Jake called out into the darkness. "What do you want?" Suddenly, the animatronics sprang to life, their movements jerky and unnatural. One of the figures, a skeletal clown, pointed a bony finger towards a door at the far end of the room. "I think they want us to go through there," Alex said, his heart pounding. With no other options, they made their way to the door. As they opened it, a blast of cold air hit them, carrying with it the faint sound of a child sobbing. The teens steeled themselves and stepped through, leaving the unsettling whispers and mechanical horrors behind. The room they entered was even darker than the one they had left, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. Their flashlights revealed walls covered in grotesque murals, depicting scenes of torment and despair. The sobbing grew louder, echoing off the walls and making their skin crawl. "Where are we?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "It's like a twisted maze," Jake replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. "We need to find a way out." As they moved deeper into the House of Horrors, the murals seemed to come to life, the painted figures writhing in silent agony. The sobbing morphed into cries for help, each one more desperate than the last. "Look," Emma said, pointing to a corner where the light from her flashlight revealed a small, huddled figure. "There's someone there." They approached cautiously, and as they drew nearer, the figure looked up, revealing the face of a ghostly child. Her eyes were hollow and filled with sorrow, her translucent form shimmering in the light. "Help us," she whispered, her voice filled with a mix of hope and despair. "He won't let us leave." "Who?" Alex asked, kneeling beside her. "Who won't let you leave?" "The owner," she replied, her voice trembling. "He trapped us here. We need to find him. To stop him." The teens exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that their night of dares had turned into a quest to uncover the park's darkest secrets. They had to find the park's owner, the man responsible for the tragedy that had left these children trapped between worlds. With renewed determination, they followed the ghostly child's directions deeper into the House of Horrors, unaware of the true horrors that awaited them in the shadows. The ghostly child's directions led the group through a winding corridor, their flashlights flickering as if struggling against the darkness. They soon found themselves standing before a set of ornate, decaying double doors. Above them, a sign read, "Hall of Mirrors," in faded, looping script. "Are we sure about this?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We have to be," Alex replied, pushing open the doors. A gust of musty air greeted them, and they stepped inside, the doors closing behind them with a resonant thud. Inside, The room was a labyrinth of cracked and tarnished mirrors. The glass distorted their reflections, twisting their faces into grotesque parodies. The air was thick with tension, every step echoing unnaturally. "Stay close," Jake advised. "We don't want to get separated." As they ventured deeper into the maze, the mirrors began to play tricks on their minds. Reflections shifted and moved independently, showing scenes from their pasts and fears they had never voiced. Alex saw a reflection of himself as a child, lost and crying for his mother. Emma's reflection showed her trapped in a burning building, unable to escape. Mia's mirror showed her surrounded by faceless figures, their hands reaching out to grab her. Jake's reflection revealed him alone in a dark room, shadows closing in from all sides. "These aren't real," Alex said, trying to steady his breathing. "They're just reflections." But the longer they stared, the more real the images seemed to become. The reflected fears began to bleed into reality, the boundaries between mirror and world blurring. They could hear the crackle of flames, feel the cold touch of the faceless figures, sense the oppressive darkness. "We need to move," Jake urged, breaking the spell. "Keep moving." The group pressed on, but the maze seemed to stretch endlessly. Every turn brought them back to familiar reflections, trapping them in a disorienting loop. Panic began to set in as they realized the true nature of the Hall of Mirrors. It was designed to ensnare and confuse, a perfect trap for those who dared enter. "Over here!" Mia called out, spotting a faint glow ahead. They hurried towards the light, finding a single unbroken mirror at the maze's center. Unlike the others, this mirror was pristine, its surface smooth and clear. But as they approached, the reflections began to change. Instead of their own faces, they saw the ghostly children, their eyes pleading for help. "We need to break it," Emma said, grabbing a piece of debris from the ground. With a determined swing, she shattered the mirror, its pieces falling to the floor with a deafening crash. As the mirror broke, the maze began to dissolve around them, the illusions fading. They found themselves in a narrow passageway, free from the maze's grip. The ghostly children appeared again, their forms more solid than before. "You're getting closer," one of them said. "He's just beyond here. Please, help us find peace." With renewed resolve, the teens followed the passageway, leaving the Hall of Mirrors and its tormented reflections behind. They were closer to uncovering the park's dark secrets, but they knew the worst was yet to come. The passageway led them to a clearing where the old Ferris wheel stood. Its skeletal frame loomed against the night sky, creaking eerily in the wind. The gondolas swayed as if beckoning the group closer, the rusted chains clinking like ghostly chimes. "We have to ride it," Alex said, his voice filled with dread. "I think that's the only way to get to him." The group exchanged uneasy glances, but knew they had no other choice. They climbed into one of the gondolas, the metal groaning under their weight. With a jolt, the Ferris wheel sprang to life, the gears grinding as it began to turn. As they ascended, the park unfolded below them, a desolate expanse of decaying rides and overgrown pathways. The higher they went, the more the world seemed to blur, the lines between reality and the supernatural growing ever thinner. Halfway up, the wheel stopped abruptly, leaving them suspended in midair. The gondolas swayed precariously, and the group held their breath, fearing the worst. But then a ghostly figure appeared in the gondola opposite them, a child, his face pale and eyes filled with sorrow. "He's at the top," the the child whispered, his voice carried by the wind. You must confront him. The wheel jolted back into motion, carrying them higher and higher until they reached the apex. There, standing on the platform at the very top, was a spectral figure of a man, his features twisted by anger and regret. Who are you? Jake shouted over the wind. The figure turned, revealing himself as the park's owner, the man responsible for the tragic fire. His eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and a cruel smile twisted his lips. I am the reason they suffer, he said, his voice echoing with a hollow resonance. And now, so shall you. The gondola shook violently, and the teens clung to each other, fear gripping their hearts. But the ghostly children appeared again, their presence a beacon of hope. You can stop him, one of them said. Use the truth. Truth? Emma asked, her voice trembling. The fire, the child replied. Expose his lies. Set us free. With this revelation, the group found their courage. Alex stood tall, facing the spectral owner. You caused the fire, he said, his voice strong. You trapped these children here. It's time for you to face the truth. The owner's smile faltered, his form flickering. You know nothing, he roared, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. You did this out of greed, Jake added, stepping beside Alex. Your negligence killed them. They deserve peace. As the teen spoke the truth, the Ferris wheel began to tremble, the air around them shimmering with supernatural energy. The spectral owner's form wavered, his power diminishing. No, he screamed, his voice fading. You cannot defeat me! But it was too late. The truth had shattered his hold on the park. With one final, anguished cry, the owner's spirit disintegrated, leaving behind a lingering wail that echoed into silence. The Ferris wheel slowly descended, bringing the group back to the ground. The ghostly children surrounded them, their faces peaceful for the first time. Thank you, one of them said. We can rest now. As the spirits faded into the night, the teens felt a profound sense of relief. They had uncovered the dark secret of Spectre Falls and freed the trapped souls. The park, once a place of nightmares, was now a silent, haunted memory. The ground beneath their feet felt solid again, but the air was still heavy with the remnants of the supernatural energy. The teens gathered their thoughts, the adrenaline from their encounter with the park's owner slowly dissipating. They knew there was still more to uncover, more to understand about the spirits that lingered in Spectre Falls. Why do I feel like it's not over yet? Mia asked, looking around nervously. Because it isn't, Alex replied. We stopped him, but the children are still here. We need to find out what's keeping them bound to this place. The group made their way back towards the center of the park, their steps slower, more deliberate. The air seemed to thrum with a new energy, as if the very ground recognized their efforts to bring peace. They arrived at the old administration building, a once grand structure now fallen into ruin. The door hung off its hinges, and the windows were shattered, but it was clear this place held more secrets. The teens stepped inside, the floor creaking ominously under their weight. Look at this, Emma said, pointing to a large, dust-covered ledger on a desk. It's the records for the park. They flipped through the pages, finding lists of employees, maintenance logs, and guest records. But it wasn't until they reached the back of the ledger that they found something truly disturbing. Detailed notes on the park's construction, including cost-cutting measures and ignored safety protocols. This is it, Jake said, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. He didn't just neglect the park, he deliberately cut corners knowing it was dangerous. The children were victims of his greed, Alex added, shaking his head. This has to be what's keeping them here. They need acknowledgement, justice for what happened to them. Suddenly the room grew colder, and the ghostly children began to appear around them, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and longing. You see us? One of the spirits said, her voice soft and echoing. You know what happened? We do, Emma replied, stepping forward. We know the truth. You were wronged, and we're here to help make it right. The air shimmered, and a sense of calm seemed to wash over the room. The spirits smiled, their forms becoming more defined, more real. They were finally being acknowledged, their tragic story heard. But how do we give them the justice they deserve? Mia asked, looking at the others. Alex thought for a moment, then said, We need to tell their story. Make sure everyone knows what really happened here. That's how we give them peace. The group agreed, and as they prepared to leave the administration building, they felt a sense of purpose, a determination to bring light to the darkness that had plagued Spectre Falls for so long. As they stepped back into the night, the ghostly children followed, their presence now a comforting one rather than a source of fear. The teens knew they had a responsibility to these spirits, to ensure that their story was told and that no one would ever forget the tragedy that had occurred. With the evidence from the administration building and a renewed sense of purpose, the group decided their final task was to visit the park's most infamous attraction, the roller coaster. It was rumored to be the site where the fire had started, the catalyst for the tragedy that followed. The roller coaster loomed in the distance, its twisted tracks silhouetted against the moonlit sky. As they approached, the air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over them. This was the heart of the park's darkness, the place where the past and present collided most violently. We need to be careful, Jake said, gripping his flashlight tightly. This is where it all began. They climbed the steps to the roller coaster's platform, the wooden planks creaking under their feet. The coaster cars sat on the tracks, their paint faded and peeling, the metal rusting with age. As they reached the top, the ghostly children appeared once more, their forms clearer than ever. They pointed towards the control booth where the fire had supposedly started. There, one of the spirits said. That's where he did it. He locked us in and started the fire. The teens exchanged grim looks and approached the control booth. Inside, they found more evidence of the owner's negligence, faulty wiring, empty gasoline cans, and charred remnants of paper. He locked you in here? Emma asked, horrified. The spirits nodded. He wanted to collect the insurance money. We were just collateral. The group felt a renewed sense of anger and sadness. They had uncovered the full extent of the owner's cruelty, but now they needed to ensure that his deeds were known to the world. We need to get this out, Alex said. People need to know what happened here. They took pictures of the evidence, determined to share the truth with the authorities and the media. As they worked, the air around them seemed to grow lighter, the oppressive darkness lifting. The roller coaster, once a symbol of fear and death, now stood as a testament to their resolve. They had faced the horrors of Spectre Falls and uncovered the truth. The ghostly children began to fade, their faces peaceful. Thank you, one of the spirits whispered. You've set us free. With their mission complete, the teens left the roller coaster, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. They had brought justice to the spirits and ensured that the tragic story of Spectre Falls would never be forgotten. The park, once a place of nightmares, was now a resting place for the souls who had suffered there. Morning light began to creep over the horizon as the group made their way back to the entrance of Spectre Falls. The park, bathed in the soft glow of dawn, looked less menacing, almost peaceful. The night's horror seemed like a distant memory, yet the weight of their discoveries lingered heavily in their minds. "We did it," Emma said, breaking the silence. "We really did it." Alex nodded, looking back at the park one last time. "Yeah, but it's not over. We need to make sure people know the truth." Jake pulled out his phone, already dialing the local authorities. "I'll call the police. They need to see the evidence we found, and then we can get the media involved." As they stood at the gates waiting for the authorities to arrive, a sense of closure began to settle over them. The ghostly children had been set free, and soon the world would know the true story of Spectre Falls. The park would no longer be a place of forgotten horrors, but a symbol of their bravery and determination to uncover the truth. When the police arrived, the teens recounted their harrowing experience, showing them the pictures and explaining the evidence they had found. The officers listened with a mix of skepticism and awe, but the physical evidence was undeniable. "We'll investigate further," one of the officers assured them. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention." Over the next few days, news of Spectre Falls spread quickly. The media swarmed the park, uncovering its dark history and the negligence of its owner. The story of the 10 children who had perished in the fire became a tragic tale of corporate greed and lost innocence, and the teens were hailed as heroes for their bravery. Spectre Falls became a memorial site dedicated to the memory of the children who had died there. The town held a ceremony, unveiling a plaque with their names and a promise that their story would never be forgotten. For Alex, Emma, Jake, and Mia, life slowly returned to normal, but the experience had changed them. They had faced unimaginable horrors and emerged stronger, bonded by the ordeal. One evening, a few weeks after their night in the park, the group gathered once more at their usual hangout spot by the old railroad tracks. The summer air was warm, and the stars twinkled overhead. "Do you think they're really at peace now?" Mia asked, staring up at the sky. "I think so," Alex replied. "We gave them justice. That's what they needed." Emma smiled. "And we made sure their story will be remembered." As they sat together, the faint sound of laughter drifted on the breeze, a gentle reminder of the spirits they had helped. But this laughter wasn't eerie or unsettling. It was the joyous sound of children finally at peace. Spectre Falls Amusement Park stood silent and still, but it was no longer a place of nightmares. It was a resting place, a memorial, and a testament to the power of truth and bravery. The shadows that had once haunted the park were gone, replaced by the silent shadows of memory and peace. And the teens, forever changed by their experience, knew that they had done something truly important. They had faced the darkness and brought light to a place where it had long been extinguished. Spectre Falls would always be a part of them, a reminder of the night they had dared to uncover its secrets and free the spirits trapped within. As they walked away from the tracks, ready to embrace the future, they felt a profound sense of closure. The haunted amusement park was no longer a source of fear, but a chapter in their lives that had made them stronger and more courageous. And in the distance, under the starlit sky, Spectre Falls stood as a silent sentinel, its shadows now at rest, its ghosts finally at peace.